What was Kurt like as a person, aside from the music?
Well, he was very outgoing on stage, but off stage he was pretty quiet. He was philosophical. I had published this book called Experiencing Nirvana, and it's essentially us traveling with Nirvana for a week in Europe. Let me just share some of that story a little bit, because that's a time when I really had an opportunity to hang out with Kurt. So this is late November in '89. They had spent 6 weeks in a van with the Tad band. So you have 2 bands in a van traveling, crisscrossing Europe, getting super fried, right? Mm-hmm. So we get this message that Kurt is not doing well. Like, he is emotionally distraught. He's really fried. We know that there's this big showcase in London in a week, and we've got to get him to the show. So John and I scraped up some nickels and flew to Rome and met the band there. And I remember walking into the club, and Kurt was pretty receptive. We had some dinner. Things seemed to be going okay, but that night Kurt had a breakdown on stage, climbed a PA, threatened to jump, came backstage, told the band that the band was over. They was breaking up the band. He literally, I'm just going to say, had a nervous breakdown on stage. So John went for a walk outside with him, and Kurt said, when I look out in the audience, I'm seeing the kids who used to beat me up in high school. That's what I'm seeing. So that's kind of where he was coming from. Again, I told you he was a quiet, sensitive kid. He got harassed in high school a lot. So what we did is we told, the rest of the musicians just to head on up to Geneva, Switzerland, and that we would catch up via train. So what we did is we spent a day in Rome, seeing the sights, going to the Vatican, going to the Colosseum, eating good food, drinking good coffee, and taking a train up to see the rest of the band. So I got to spend a day in Rome with Kurt, along with my business partner, Jonathan. And the more I got to know Kurt, again, he was shy and not that talkative, but because I had a whole day to spend with him, I got to know what a deep thinker he was, and just a very interesting character. And just because he was quiet off stage didn't mean that he didn't have a lot of thoughts going on. So he was very appreciative of taking that time out to really experience the city. It was at that moment that I realized that this guy is very intelligent, creative person.
And were you surprised at all by that?
Yeah, I was, actually. He was exceptionally intelligent. And, I'd seen him at shows, and we, met at the office and so forth, but he didn't really say a whole lot. Chris did most of the talking when you were dealing with the band. So once I really got exposed to the depth of his personality, I had a deeper level of respect for him. And I was also seeing, after that, they played some shows, we followed them, they played London. They had some new tracks. Their show was dialed, and you could just see that the band at that point, by late '89, they were really coming into their own, and Kurt's songwriting was really getting more dialed. It was a turning point for me, because up until that time, most of my focus was on Mudhoney. I knew those guys. They were killing it. And Nirvana was just kind of like the opening act. The guys from Aberdeen, who are pretty good. That's kind of where we were at. But as a group, their creativity just continued to accelerate. And that's, to me, the most fascinating part of the story, is they just they grew so quickly.
When was the first time you really started to notice that growth?
Well, I'll tell you, we saw them. They came up to do a showcase in mid-April of '88. This was just a few weeks after John and I opened our offices. That summer, they recorded their first single for us, Love Buzz, which sounded great. It was a cover, though, again, showing you that Kurt's songwriting hadn't really matured. So the first single we released was a cover. We released it in November of 1988. The next day, one of my best friends, Charles Peterson, the photographer who had documented much of the scene, called me up and said, I threw a party last night, and I threw on Love Buzz, and we just kept playing it over and over and over. So, yeah, that was kind of my first hint when that single came out and got a tremendous response. One issue that came up with the single, an anecdote that a lot of people aren't familiar with, is when we released the single itself, it had a spoken word intro, kind of a little montage that you can't really find on the CD. But when he originally brought it to us, he wanted a 45-second montage that was very surreal and interesting, but I had to step in and be the corporate ogre and say, you know what? A little snippet of that is going to grab people's attention, but not 45 seconds. So Kurt and I would go back and forth on some of the creative stuff, and I felt it was a healthy relationship.
What was your relationship like with Kurt?
Kurt and I would say we were friends. We were colleagues for sure. We had a good rapport. You have to remember, though, that Kurt was living in Olympia at the time. I was living in Seattle. And Kurt really was a hermit of sorts. I remember visiting Olympia and talking to one of my best friends, Calvin Johnson, who ran K Records, who was also a very good friend of Kurt's. I said, "How's Kurt doing?" He goes, "Well, I haven't seen him for 6 months." And you got to realize Olympia is a small town. So Kurt, he liked to sleep in and stay up very, very late. So I didn't see him a whole lot other than the shows and in studio time, but I felt our rapport was really good, and I would say we definitely had a friendship.
So going back to the very beginning of your relationship with Nirvana, from what I understand, when Jonathan Pondman first showed you the Dale demo, you weren't really that impressed by it. What was your initial reaction to that demo?
My initial reaction was that I thought it sounded good, that Kurt had a great voice, but the songwriting was a little immature. That was my take. And I still feel that in reviewing their first album, Bleach, I'd say the same thing. There are a couple of classic tracks on there. I think Blue and About a Girl in particular really stand the test of time. But to me, the real star of that album is actually the producer, Jack Endino, because he created a record that just grabbed people with its essentially with its vibe and its presence. And he recorded for $600. So to me, Jack's the real genius behind that album. Kurt had a great voice, but the amazing thing about working with Nirvana is watching them grow and develop and get better and better and better. And that was an amazing thing to experience.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what you see, make sure to subscribe for more. All the videos on this channel are original. I'm the one conducting all the interviews and editing all the videos together. So if you guys like what you see and you want to support, the best way to do so is honestly just to subscribe. Lots more to come.